Hello, everybody, and welcome to, I guess this is a UFC 254 recap slash reaction to basically what we saw just now today during the day at UFC 254. The big news, obviously, Khabib Nurmagomedov retiring. Tons to discuss. Obviously, that leaves this sport in a very interesting situation, the lightweight division in an interesting situation. And then on top of that, there's a lot else, a lot more things that happen on that card. So a lot to discuss. So real quick, let's just tackle the big news of the card. By the way, if you guys have any questions, if you guys want to ask anything, feel free and throw that on the YouTube live chat, and I'll get to that at any point during this video. This is a little bit less structured than the weekly live Q&As that we're used to seeing on Tuesdays, but nonetheless, we're gonna get everything done here, and that still will be happening. I'll still be going live on Tuesday as of now, so I'll let you guys know if anything changes, but that's the plan as of now. So anyways, like I said, tons to discuss. But before we get into everything, make sure you're subscribed to this channel. Make sure that you have given this video a thumbs up, share it, follow me everywhere right here at Danny Segura TV, and we're good to go. So let's tackle the big news. Khabib Nurmagomedov retired, arguably one of the biggest stars, or the biggest star in the sport. It really comes down to him and Conor McGregor. And yes, he retired from the sport, which is extremely surprising. Not that anybody thought that he was going to stick around MMA for a really long time, but I think people did take his father's request of going 30-0, so 2 more bouts, including the one that we saw earlier today, as at least 2 guaranteed fights that we were going to get Khabib Nurmagomedov in mixed martial arts. Obviously, we know that he also had interest in a George St-Pierre bout. He had talked about it a lot of times in the past before in many interviews. St-Pierre himself has shown a lot of interest in that bout as well. So again, like you said, not surprised that his career's coming to an end sort of at an early stage. We knew he wasn't going to stick around for a really long time, but like I said, it really did feel like we were going to get 2 guaranteed fights. This bout with Justin Gaethje, and then a huge bout with either Conor McGregor or George St-Pierre as sort of his walk-away retirement bout. So I was caught by surprise. That was my initial reaction when I saw his team take out the gloves following his submission win over Justin Gaethje in the main event of UFC 254. I was watching with my brother and my dad, and I'm like, I think he's retiring. And they're like, nah. I'm like, I think he's retiring. And then all of a sudden, he does remove his gloves and begins sort of his his speech, thanking his coaches, thanking the UFC, Joe Silva, and explaining his retirement. And basically, his retirement came down to his mother asking him not to fight anymore, given the fact that his father, who passed away earlier this year over the summer due to COVID-19 complications, is not there anymore. So we know that his father was a very important figure in his life, not only as a father, but also as a coach and as a friend. And we know that this sort of career was their project. It really wasn't just Khabib, and his dad had a big role in this whole journey, in this whole career. And we know that fighting for Khabib is not just about the money. Plus, he's already made a good amount of money already. So it all makes sense. A lot of people are, I saw, not a lot of people, but I did see some people suggest that maybe this could be some sort of technique, some sort of tactic to, some sort of negotiation tactic to get the UFC to perhaps not give him more money, but give him that bout with George St-Pierre. We know that the UFC was a little bit not too willing to give that bout. They weren't really open to that bout, given the fact that George St-Pierre is really interested only in big fights and one-offs. He's not there to defend the belt, and obviously the UFC, as a big business, as a machine that's constantly putting on fights, that's not good for business. It's not good to have the champion just walk away after they won the belt. So again, I saw some people suggest that. I really don't think so. I think Khabib is very different than most fighters. I don't think he would resort to this sort of tactics in order to, get the UFC to give him something. I think if the man says he's going to do something, he's going to do it. He is a man of principle. He is someone that, again, he's never really cared about the money, so that's not an issue. It was all about a legacy. And when he says that, he's retiring because his mom asked him not to continue and to sort of end his career after the Justin Gaethje fight. I believe him. I really do think this is the end for Khabib Nurmagomedov in mixed martial arts. I could be wrong. Opinions change. Life is long. Also, we already know, keep in mind that after the fight, Khabib Nurmagomedov just broke down in tears, and he was very emotional, something that's actually quite rare from the guy. The guy's usually very stoic, very emotionless. And we know that he carried a heavy burden into this fight. There were so many questions on how he would perform, not only because of the questions that his adversary, Justin Gaethje, brought to the table, obviously the wrestling background, the high volume striking, along with the power, right? And then on top of that, how is he going to do this whole time that he hasn't been with his father, this, and that? So yeah, it's all very interesting stuff, but you see that, and you can also picture a scenario where that moment could be so emotional, right? Maybe once he's sort of removed from that, right? Once he's sort of taken some time to process really his father's death, because this really just happened, and he knew that he had to fight Justin Gaethje as soon as Gaethje won the interim title earlier this year. That I don't think he's had much time to process it. So again, I'm not saying that he's gonna unretire, but that's also something to keep in mind, right? Maybe a few months down the line, once he's taken some time off, and maybe his mom feels differently. Maybe, I don't know, his friends, teammate feel differently as well. Maybe he has an itch to get back in the cage. I don't know. But it does seem like he retired for good. It does seem like he truly is walking away from the sport. And again, Khabib is always says what he's gonna do, and when he says something, he does it. So I really do think this is the end for Khabib Nurmagomedov. And to be quite honest, it was sad. I saw a lot of people, fellow media members, fellow co-workers and former co-workers and whatnot, basically just discuss and express online on Twitter how sad this moment was. Everyone seemed to be very bummed, and I certainly felt that as well. But I did put this out on Twitter, and obviously because of the reaction, I feel like a lot of people like it. And it was really the last sentence here that I wrote. I said, Khabib Nurmagomedov is undoubtedly the best lightweight to ever compete in MMA. Amazing career, truly one of the greatest ever. He went 29-0 in the toughest weight class. Now, I wrote, it sucks to see him walk away, but that's the way it should feel when someone does it right. And that is extremely true. I mean, we kind of felt the same way with Henry Cejudo, and that's the way it feels. If somebody walks away on top, if somebody leaves whatever sport they're in as the best ever, with the biggest accomplishment, having succeeded the most, being at the top, being the very best at what they do, that's how it should feel. That's how it should feel. And when it feels like that, that means someone did it right. Because the contrary feeling to that is, and sadly we've seen it many times in MMA and boxing, is fighters retire a bit too late, and you're just like, you should have hung up the gloves 3-4 fights ago. Even one fight can change. I mean, look at Anderson Silva. He's fighting at the end of this month. A lot of people maybe see him much differently now than they did a few years ago because of some of the losses that he's taken and some of the performances that he's had. So certainly it sucks. It doesn't feel good. It's sad. But I'll say this. I'll say that if it feels that way, that means it's right, and that means Khabib is doing something right. And look, he's walking away, maybe not at a beautiful 30-0, 29-0, a bit of a random number, right? But it's still 29 victories. Most of those, or not most of those, but a lot of those victories came in the UFC, in the best organization on the planet, in the best weight class on the planet, and many years defending his title and really cementing himself as, undoubtedly, as I said on Twitter, he is the greatest, hands down. I mean, no one can take this away from him. He is the greatest lightweight to ever exist in the sport of mixed martial arts. And I don't see anybody breaking that anytime soon. I just don't see it. I mean, what he's been able to achieve is incredible. And look, we haven't even gotten into the actual performance. Here I am talking about Khabib's career, but that performance against Justin Gaethje was just absolutely wonderful. He achieved mount, and then from there got the triangle set back and went back on his back and choked Justin Gaethje. Unfortunately for Justin Gaethje, he actually tapped out several times. The referee didn't catch that, but he ultimately went to sleep. But he'll be all right. He's been through much worse, obviously, with wars with Eddie Alvarez, Dustin Poirier, and many others. But yeah, it was a fantastic performance. He was tested. I mean, Justin Gaethje was game. He avoided the grappling quite well, clipped him a couple of times pretty hard, and he was able to still absorb the punches as well as the leg kicks. The leg kicks were hard. They came often, and Khabib was always pushing forward. So all around, really, all I can say is Khabib is really one of the greatest fighters to have ever lived. I'm a little hesitant to call him the greatest. I think going up in weight classes and improving, you can have success in other weight classes certainly gives you a good case for that. That's why maybe I'm a little conflicted. And certainly other fighters as well have had very much successful runs where could give them a tough competition for that spot, right? Like John Jones, Demetrius Johnson. But certainly he's got to be up there pound for pound. I mean, you could make a very solid case that he's the greatest, but obviously that is a more difficult conversation. But I think as far as a 155 goes, I mean, you can't possibly, you can try, but I don't think you can possibly make a good argument that he's not the greatest lightweight to have ever lived. I mean, undefeated, many fights. It's not like he's retiring at 12-0 or anything like that. You know, almost 30 fights in the game, several years in the game, fighting the best. He truly is the greatest lightweight ever. All right, so lots to talk about. Also, you know, on the common event, Robert Whittaker picked up a big win. I have some opinions on that, which I might give you in a few minutes here. However, I do want to go to the YouTube live chat because I hear it's quite busy from the notifications here. So I'm going to take a few questions to the YouTube live chat. I'll probably just keep talking about Khabib and Justin Gaethje and kind of what's next for the UFC lightweight division. Then we can pivot to 185 pounds and talk about Robert Whittaker's big victory over Jared Cannonier, which was quite impressive. A fight that was very exciting. That, you know, it was one of those fights that at the end of it, you're kind of like wishing it was 5 rounds because you knew that there was just so much more layers to it if we would have gone an extra 10 minutes. But anyway, so let's address the YouTube questions right now. So again, if you're new to this live chat, throw questions on the YouTube live chat, and I'll get to those questions right now. Don't forget, subscribe, like. You already know the deal. Alex Howie, what's next for the UFC lightweight division? So that's very interesting. Luckily, again, I think Khabib generally out of the sport is a bad thing, right? Because we're losing, as I said, a fantastic fighter. I don't have to say everything again, but we're losing a gem. We're losing someone that's very important. We're really losing a historical figure for the sport. And I think we'll realize that as the years go by, like, wow, this guy was truly special. And frankly, I don't know if we're ever going to see someone like him again. But I would say the only good thing that I can think of immediately out of the top of my head that could be good from Khabib walking away from the sport is that it opens things up at 155 pounds. And I think it won't be exactly like this example that I'm going to give in just a few seconds here, but I think it'll be something similar. And I think once I mention this, you guys can see that and can see how things at lightweight at 155 pounds could actually improve with Khabib walking away. And I'll compare this to Henry Cejudo leaving the bantamweight division. It was a little bit clogged because obviously he was one of the bigger names in the really lower weight classes, right? Someone that could, you know, be on pay-per-view, and be sort of one of the main attractions there and put on fairly big fights, right? And for some reason, because some of the big fights that he wanted, right, he was targeting Jose Aldo, he fought Dominic Cruz, this and that. It just seemed like there was a big log jam and there was a big stalemate because then everyone is kind of like the Spider-Man meme where everyone's just pointing at each other. Who's the #1 contender? And everyone trying to make their case on social, interviews, hype, etc. But not much fighting. But as soon as he walked away, everyone put on their gloves and knuckle up. And all of a sudden, bantamweight, we're seeing truly tons of elite fights constantly. I mean, we just saw one on this card, 2 guys that weren't even ranked, and it was a fantastic fight. I'm talking about Nathaniel Wood and Casey Kenny. And look, all of a sudden that division got moving again, right? Because the king was out, and all of a sudden you got everyone cutting each other heads off to get to the top, and it was sort of up for grabs, really. So in that way, it really benefited. Although Cejudo was a big star leaving that division, it really benefited, and everything else around that flourished. And really, we're seeing a lot of fighters just again, Chito Vera. There's so many fighters at 135 pounds that are making good cases to be the next champion. And frankly, it's quite fun, and we're seeing very good fights. And I think we can see something similar at 155 pounds. And I say this because, obviously Khabib, as great as he is and all the nice things that he said about him, he is a fairly inactive champion. He's not like John Jones in 2019, or maybe Israel Adesanya, who's already fought twice this year, right? And maybe a few other examples that you can think of guys that are mainly stay healthy and are able to defend their belt. Maybe also financially, maybe their contract is not as expensive as Khabib, so they can put on more fights throughout the year, right? Apart from the UFC having to build these huge events, right? Because Khabib's payday must be pretty fat, right? So Khabib basically was fighting like once, twice a year at best, so that kind of slowed things down at 155 pounds. With him leaving, again, I'm not saying that another champion could go up there and again have sort of a low level of activity, but it's certainly, I think it would speed things up, and now all of a sudden you're going to see a bloodbath at 155. That's really what I think. I don't think to the same degree that we saw at bantamweight, Alex Howie, to answer your question, but a similar one. I do think we're going to see, again, all of a sudden, Tony Ferguson. I mean, who wants to book a fifth fight with Khabib? I certainly do, but I would understand why the promotion would be hesitant, right? Dustin Poirier, vouching for a rematch after you just lost a year ago very badly to Khabib. Now, all of a sudden, he becomes a very, very game. Same thing with Conor McGregor, who had lost to Khabib, and many others, right? So yeah, I think if this truly is the last time we saw Khabib Nurmagomedov, things at 155 pounds are going to get very, very interesting. And I think that we're going to see a bloodbath. We're going to see, again, it just disrupts the whole order, the whole even hierarchy of the people who you thought, okay, this guy would get the first title shot, second, third, kind of down the line. It disrupts everything. So fresh matchups, again, it's hitting the research, the reset button. It's clearing the cache. It's just resetting everything. So I would say that'd be the only positive thing. And yeah, I think that's what we're going to see next, Alex Howie, to answer your questions. I don't have any specific matchups to give you, but I think we're going to see a bloodbath. The one that comes to mind right now is Dustin Poirier versus Conor McGregor. That rematch that's set for January 23rd. I think that all of a sudden becomes a lot more interesting and a lot more important. If truly Khabib does not fight, does not return to MMA, and this truly is the end, they could very well turn that fight into a title fight, at least for the vacant, if they want to give a little bit more time for Khabib to sort of breathe and maybe perhaps return. But all of a sudden, that fight has a lot more stock, because they already did. And, Michael Chandler's there. I mean, Tony Ferguson's still game. 155 pounds is going to get a lot more interesting. So what's next? Only time will tell. Obviously, depending on what Khabib decides to do, to stay retired or return. But there's going to be a bloodbath if he doesn't come back. And it's going to be quite exciting. So it's a big win for the fans as far as that. So it's not all gloomy. I know it's sad that Khabib is walking away, but it's not all depression. I know there's some positive things, and I think we're gonna realize that in the coming months. JS, how can Khabib be the GOAT with only 3 title defenses? And I'm talking again. I haven't made a case for him to be the GOAT like ever, pound for pound, but at lightweight for sure, certainly. And you got to keep in mind and remember, I know it's kind of hard because, that was many years ago. And on top of that, there's so much going on in the sport that a year feels so much longer, right? Khabib used to kind of be in the same situation that Tony Ferguson was in. He was one of these guys that was very good, was picking up very good wins, but just couldn't get a title shot. And he actually won many, many fights before he was given the opportunity to fight for a belt. And within that stretch, he picked up some impressive victories. If you guys don't remember, when he defeated Michael Johnson, he was literally just ground and pounding Michael Johnson as he was talking to Dana White ringside or cage side, telling him, do I deserve a title shot yet? Boom. And then another strike like that. The guy, people forget because he's this big star, and you see him like, if you think of 155, he's sort of the face of it. But he did have a struggle to get a title fight. And in the lead up to that, very much like Tony Ferguson, how you can make a case that Tony Ferguson is also one of the greatest lightweights that's competed in the UFC. He might have not held an actual belt, but because they didn't give him one, he had to fight so many studs that many of those fights could have easily been title defenses. But look, he beats RDA back in 2014. That guy was a killer. That was a big deal. You know what I'm saying? Michael Johnson is certainly a good win. Edson Barbosa is a huge win. That guy's been a stud at 155 pounds, now at 145. Obviously, beating Conor McGregor is a big deal. I know Conor McGregor gets a lot of hate, but he's very much a skilled and elite fighter. Dustin Poirier is no joke, especially Dustin Poirier that we've seen now. I think that win specifically is going to age quite well. We're going to see a lot more from Dustin Poirier in the future. And I mean, Justin Gaethje, I mean, that guy is just phenomenal as well. And yeah, he just had very, very good wins. And then not only the type of wins that he got, but how he got them as well, right? He was always extremely dominant. Maybe very early into his career, many people point to that Gleison Tibau, but we can clearly say that he's no longer the same fighter. I mean, look at the striking then and the striking that we saw against Gaethje. I mean, towards the end of that first round against Gaethje, he was kind of outstriking him. He was having some good success. So yeah, he was able to find a lot of success and be extremely, extremely dominant in that weight class, which, as I said, is one of the hardest weight classes in the sport. To me, is 155 and 170. So yeah, I do think, retiring undefeated, having picked up so many wins in the way that he did, he is undoubtedly the greatest 155-pound fighter on the planet to ever exist. Frankly, I think if maybe BJ Penn would have handled this career much differently, maybe that would have been a different conversation, but or at least a tougher conversation, right? But given the fact that he stuck around a bit too long and he had some pretty bad losses. I mean, that's a guy who lost to Dennis Seaver, right? You can't say that about Khabib. I think this makes Khabib the greatest lightweight to ever exist. So I hope that answers your question, JS. All right. Khabib overrated. Certainly, some people think that's how it should be. But look, you can't possibly submit Justin Gaethje and do what you did tonight being overrated. Like, clearly, he's a really, really good fighter. You can't beat Conor McGregor. You can't beat Dustin Poirier. You can't beat Ali Quinta, although I know he's kind of goofy, but he's still a very good fighter. Edson Barbosa, RDA, Michael Johnson. You can't beat all those guys and stuff. You have to be pretty damn good. So I disagree with that. Rocking the Faustino Asprilla jersey. Sweet. That's right. Parma 93, I think. This was interesting. Eddie, nice guy. Hi, Danny. Weren't you surprised that Justin had nothing for Khabib on the ground? Like, nothing. Caught by the moment. Yeah, no, I wasn't surprised. I mean, jiu-jitsu wise and sort of grappling on the bottom, Khabib is I mean, Justin Gaethje is not really a jiu-jitsu guy. I mean, he even said it. My thing is defending the takedowns and getting back up. That's it. And yeah, I mean, that's what we saw. As soon as Khabib was able to achieve a dominant position on him, Gaethje just had no answers because that's just not his game. He's not there someone who's going to be shrimping, going to be, tying you up, pulling guard, rubber guard like a Tony Ferguson, and sort of having some success offensively off his back. He's a guy that's going to spring back up, and when he couldn't spring back up and he had Khabib on top of him, it was game over. I said it before. I said it on my Spanish podcast for MMA Junkie, Hablemos MMA, speaking with Rodrigo El Campo in a preview for this event, and I even said it on Tuesday on my weekly live Q&A. I think hindsight, this was going to be one of those fights where we're like, oh, of course he was just going to run through Justin Gaethje. And don't get me wrong, I don't want to discredit his wrestling background and his striking and what he brings, because he's definitely a game fighter, and I respect the hell out of Gaethje. But, Javier Mendez, when I spoke to him on Monday on Hablemos MMA, he did say something very interesting. It's like Khabib's been fighting guys his entire career that know they're going to be taken down, and yet he still does it. He's fighting guys every single fight, 29 times, guys that do not want to be taken down, and yet he takes them down. This was Justin Gaethje's first fight that he had to fight somebody whose sole purpose was to take him down. So, practice makes perfect. Khabib has been doing this for years. again, it was just a really tough hill to climb for Justin Gaethje. On top of that, again, on the biggest stage of his life, not only fighting a guy whose sole purpose is to do that, but fighting the master of that. If you think about it, Khabib truly is the greatest wrestler that's ever existed in MMA as well. He can sort of carry that accolade home as well. Just extremely successful at what he does. And yeah, to do all that halfway across the world in Abu Dhabi it was just a tough hill to climb for Justin Gaethje. And I know we'll see more of him. I wouldn't be surprised if he challenges for a belt again. But yeah, just what I kind of had a feeling of. We're going to look at this fight hindsight. Like, of course, he was going to beat Justin Gaethje. I truly do think that Tony Ferguson is the man that has the best style to give Khabib Nurmagomedov the toughest fight. To me, that's always been the case. I always ranked him number one, and then Justin Gaethje right behind just because of the wrestling background. But still, I think you got to have jiu-jitsu. You got to have submissions. Even not even to attack, not even to threaten, and keep in mind that I might submit Khabib Nurmagomedov. That might not even happen, but submissions just to stall things out, just so Khabib doesn't keep advancing positions and put you in danger, not only of ground and pound, but as we saw at UFC 254, submissions as well. So truly, you need someone like Tony Ferguson, someone that's comfortable staying on your back, because when you fight Khabib Nurmagomedov, there's no question you're going to be on your back, period. It's not a what if. You're going to be on your back. Now, it's can you survive off your back? And I think someone like Tony Ferguson can not only survive, but cause damage. Again, enough to win? I don't know. Frankly, we'll never find out now that Khabib retired, and frankly, that's quite sad as well. But on paper, I think that's the style. So anyways, I was not surprised, to answer your question, Eddie Nice Guy, that Justin Gaethje had nothing for him once he was on his back. We've known that. He's not a jiu-jitsu guy. He's a wrestler. All right. Okay, this is funny. GSP got blue balls tonight. Yeah, for sure. I don't know if you guys saw. I think it was yesterday or earlier today when the pay-per-view started. He was actually getting a haircut. So he was like this, sitting down. The camera was behind him, and he was looking at a TV for the event. So certainly he wanted that fight, and now it just seems it's kind of gone. So frankly, and I said this on Twitter, this fight is extremely consequential. Any result, whether it was Khabib retiring, Khabib winning, Khabib losing, Khabib getting really injured, whatever it was, this fight is extremely consequential because you had a potential Conor McGregor rematch in the horizon. Obviously, a huge fight in combat sports, not only MMA, but just a huge sporting event, period. On top of that, the GSP one as well. So this fight was extremely consequential. And yeah, by Khabib retiring, this also raises questions about Georges St-Pierre's future, right? I think, thank you for asking that, by the way, because frankly, I didn't even think of that till right now. What is going to happen with Georges St-Pierre? I mean, how many months have we been talking about interviews with him and, what do you think of this? Will you come back? And how many headlines have there been of him potentially teasing a comeback and also fighters calling him out and etc. But we knew that he had his eyes set on Khabib Nurmagomedov, and with him gone, frankly, we know that GSP doesn't need money. He's well off. He's all about the legacy. And with the guy that can really improve his legacy, Khabib Nurmagomedov gone, what else is there to prove, right? Like what? Go back to 170 and win the belt that you already had, win back the division that you were already king of. I think he was really interested about giving Khabib his first L and potentially getting the lightweight title, or at least saying you beat the greatest lightweight of all time, right? So very interesting stuff. Yeah, we'll see what happens with GSP. Maybe after this he goes, I'm done, guys. That's it. It was that or bust. So no pun intended. So yeah, to answer your questions, hella blue balls for GSP, 100%. All right, let's see what else people are asking here about Khabib. If not, I'll move on to Robert Whittaker, but I feel like you guys want to keep talking about Khabib, so I'll keep scrolling. Marco Aceves, hola Dani, we lucky we get you today. Milagro. Yeah, no, this is a weird one, but certainly if I can do these because of the time difference, and they didn't end that late because remember, for MMA Junkie, I have to work on Sundays, so for the podcast on Monday, so it allowed me to do this. But if I can do this more often, I certainly will. Marco Aceves, thank you. Again, Dars Von Nang. Khabib seems to have a great chin. Yeah, we've always known that. He's taking some hard shots, some really hard shots. And we've never really seen him too wobbled. Maybe the Michael Johnson fight, but even then he kind of seemed off balance. Yeah, a historic chin as well. I mean, all around, he's just a historic fighter, really. Okay, CP with an interesting question. With Khabib out of the picture, is there a second Conor McGregor era in the horizon? One where he actually defends the title. He has the skills to beat anyone in the top 15 on any given night. Yeah, I agree. Maybe a few years ago, I questioned McGregor's sort of commitment to the sport, but I think after watching him fight Cowboy and the way he handled everything, it gives me a little bit more hope. I'm still not 100% sold that he's going to fight many more times and he's going to stick around the sport for a really long time. Again, these really high-end fighters like Khabib, like Masvidal, like Nick Diaz, like Conor McGregor, and I'm talking high-end about money. I'm talking about blockbuster fights. Those guys don't fight often because for those type of events, they got to be big events. They got to be promoted. They got to do a long promotion for them to really get all the squeeze all the juice from that squeeze, right? From that event. And then on top of that, their paydays are pretty fat. They're pretty big. It's not like Khamzat Chimaev, who apparently is fighting Leon Edwards. You know, he can fight almost every weekend because probably his payday is not that big, so the UFC can't afford to constantly be taking out of the will. But you can't have a Conor McGregor step in on short notice. Hey, here, let me drop you a few million on 5 days' notice. That just doesn't happen. So I'm curious to see. I think it's all going to depend on, certainly Conor McGregor has the skills. I think it's all gonna come down to his activity level, right? If he wants to be active and get in there and not really only think about these big money fights like Masvidal or Nate Diaz or etc., I think he has the potential to rule that division. Wrestling and Khabib's style is sort of his kryptonite. One, because he doesn't have the greatest takedown defense, and two, because his striking's not like super volume, so he's not someone that can capitalize on sort of the short windows that you're going to be on the feet with Khabib. Justin Gaethje would have, right? But hindsight, he obviously didn't do as well. But yeah, with Khabib out of the picture, I think Conor McGregor has a good shot at being champion again and potentially defending the belt, right? It's pretty crazy. He's been in the UFC for how long, and we've never seen him complete or do not even a single title defense. So we'll see. We'll see, CP. Let's see what other questions. Marco Seves, in your personal opinion, do you see Tony's path to a championship easier? Certainly. Certainly. I mean, how many times did Dana White seem reluctant to booking that fight because, you know, it just seemed like something bad would happen. This time around, a freaking global pandemic canceled a fight between Khabib Nurmagomedov and Tony Ferguson. And Dana White was he would even joke around, like, what's next? If I book that fight, would a meteor hit the earth? Javier Mendez, again, I've interviewed him many times, and he's someone that's superstitious. He told me, dude, if a pandemic happened, like, I don't know what the hell is going to happen if we book another Khabib-Tony Ferguson fight. I know it's all joking, but still, you know, it's after everything that's happened, it is tough to book another Khabib-Ferguson fight. But with Khabib out of the picture, this gives Tony Ferguson, you know, not a clear path. Certainly, there needs to be some work, of course, but certainly a much better path to a title. Also, as I mentioned, Khabib is an inactive champion. He's defending his belt sometimes once a year. So the fact that there's more slots or potential slots for title fights at 155 throughout the year, it'll keep things rolling. There's going to be, obviously, you need a contender to challenge for the belt. So you'll see more contenders come and go at 155 pounds, or at least so I suspect. So certainly this is good news if your name is Tony Ferguson, and frankly, anybody at lightweight. I mean, as long as Khabib is at 155 and active in mixed martial arts, everyone's shot of becoming champion at 155 just dwindles a bit. So again, as I said, 155 pounds is going to get very, very exciting, and we're going to see a bloodbath. We're going to see a bloodbath because everyone is going to be tearing each other's heads off to get that crown. So it's exciting stuff. It's exciting stuff. All right, so I'm going to switch gears because I do really want to talk about this. Frankly, obviously the big news with Khabib retiring and also just Khabib competing in general, it really it really put a shadow over the co-main event, which was a very, very important fight at 185 pounds. And frankly, I had a lot of issues with some of the things that were said about that fight. And as you guys may know, if you guys follow me on Twitter, you guys know how I feel about that fight. By the way, if you're watching this, follow me on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, at Danny Segura TV. For those that don't know, mixed martial arts reporter. I work for MMA Junkies, MMA Junkie, which is part of USA Today. And anyways, so somebody's asking here, is Whittaker Adesanya competitive second time around? So a lot to digest here, a lot to talk about with this question. But before we address this question, let's first talk about what we saw at UFC 254 earlier today. Robert Whittaker picking up an extremely, extremely big win, an extremely exciting win over a very, very game Jared Cannonier, a decision win that, frankly, at some point it could have been a stoppage. I mean, Robert Whittaker landed a really nice head kick that wobbled Jared Cannonier and sent him to the canvas. I think if he would have let him stand up, I think maybe he would have gotten to finish, but Robert Whittaker followed through, got on top, tried to land some ground and pound, but Cannonier, being very strong and a physical specimen, really was able to tie his arms up as he was landing ground and pound and able to recover. But regardless, although he didn't pick up the finish, Robert Whittaker still got a very, very good win. Much of the talk going into this fight was this. Dana White, if Jared Cannonier wins, he's gonna get a title shot. He's gonna get a title shot. Israel Adesanya, I like Jared Cannonier. I like his energy. I want to fight him. I want to defend the belt against him. But what about Whittaker? What about Whittaker? And I said this on Twitter. A lot of champions, many champions in the UFC lose one fight, lose their belt, and they're right back in the mix. They get an immediate rematch. Cody Garbrandt, Joanna Jędrzejczyk. I mean, I can go down the list. Anderson Silva, right? The list just goes on and on and on of so many fighters that lose their belt and immediately they get an opportunity to fight for the belt. I don't think that's fair, but it happens, right? In this case, we saw a very dominant champion, a champion that's put on very, very exciting fights throughout his tenure as title holder, and lose his belt and not get an immediate rematch. Now, I know that the loss was bad. It wasn't controversial. It wasn't a close decision. He got finished by Adesanya clean in the second. Fair. No immediate rematch. I agree with that. However, since he beat Darren Till, who's very good and who's one of the best 185 pounds on the planet today, and now he beat Jared Cannonier, who's considered the title contender, really a title contender, and apart from Whittaker, the next guy in line. So he paid his dues. If you beat Darren Till and Jared Cannonier back-to-back and you were champion not so long ago, you deserve a title shot. I'm sorry, but you do. And we also saw Robert Whittaker discuss the fatigue that being a champion brought to his life, and we certainly can't discard that because we know it's a thing for sure. I mean, that same pressure retired Rose Namajunas for some time. Remember, after she got knocked out by Jessica Andrade, she's like, I'm done. I don't want to be champion. I'm good. And then we saw George St-Pierre, who we were just talking about, walk away from the sport for 4 years because he was done with the pressure. I mean, it's an incredible amount of pressure that you have to deal with when you're a champion. So when I hear Robert Whittaker say, I was fatigued, I wasn't enjoying this, my mind was out of the game, I was just going through the motions, I believe him. I believe him. And we've seen since a Robert Whittaker not holding the belt, falling back in love with the game. We're seeing a different version of him. Again, I'm not saying we're seeing Robert Whittaker 2.0 and an extremely different fighter, and all of a sudden he's going to knock out Adesanya. I'm not saying that. But I would say that nowadays there's reason to believe why that fight, to your question, second time around, would be more competitive. So I am all about it. Look, and at the end of the day, the belt needs to get defended because that's what a champion does. That's their job, their only job, defend the title. Doesn't matter if it's against Pepito Perez, Papito from the Bodega. It doesn't matter. That is your job. And at this point in time, there are no other contenders that are fit to fight for the title other than Robert Whittaker. What, you're going to put Darren Till if he beats Jack Hermanson? Dude, he just lost to Robert Whittaker. You're going to put Jack Hermanson if he beats Darren Till? He lost to Jared Cannonier not so long ago. You know what I'm saying? Adesanya has the name. He paid his dues. He just beat two of the guys. He's of the top guys. He's a former champion. And frankly, if you look at that division, who outside, forget about Adesanya. Outside of Adesanya, if you just look at the contenders, who is the most sophisticated striker? Paulo Costa? Certainly not. Darren Till, Whittaker outstruck him. Robert Whittaker is the most sophisticated, best striker in that division outside of Adesanya. Again, I'm not saying he's going to go in there and knock him out, but he is smart enough to speak the language. He's smart enough to sort of, maybe not figure out the puzzle, but again, speak the language and have a conversation in there when it comes to the striking. So I don't know about you guys. I know this is a very unpopular opinion. This is a very me opinion, and I know I voiced it before this matchup, weeks before, that this should have been a title eliminator, not just a one-way deal for Cannonier. I'm all in an Adesanya versus Whittaker bout. I'm all in. I'm all in. I think it's a fantastic bout. I think it's a good rematch. I think it's a huge fight for the Oceania region. There are also no other contenders in line. The dude's paid, the dude's put in the work. He's paid his dues. Fuck it. Give him the fight. I'm all in for an Adesanya-Whittaker rematch. All in. I know, again, I'm not telling you to agree with me. I completely understand that. But I know this is a very unpopular opinion, but I'm all in. Unless you're going to 205 and fighting John Jones or something like that, maybe I'll be okay with skipping Whittaker. But if you're going to defend your belt at 185 pounds, it better be Robert Whittaker. That's your guy. That's it. Quick reminder for those who are new to this channel, my name is Danny Segura. I'm a reporter for MMAJunkie.com. You can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook at Danny Segura TV. And yeah, make sure you like this video and subscribe to the channel. I do weekly content here, very much like we're doing here. Let's see what other questions. Again, just a reminder, if you're just joining, I'm answering your questions on the YouTube live chat. So if you have any questions regarding anything that we saw tonight at UFC 254, feel free to drop in a question and I will get to it. Keys Ryan, interesting question. Who won, Justin or Khabib? I think Khabib, man. I think Khabib got it just by a little bit. Let's see here. Khabib is the GOAT. Certainly, there's a case for that. I'm not going to talk you out of it. If you missed the GOAT talk, you can rewind this video and check that out. Do you have a normal job? No. I cover mixed martial arts. I cover MMA for a living for USA Today Sports, MMA Junkie. So that's what I do for a living. Thankfully. Not many people can do that. Colombian, I always thought Danny was French-Canadian. Now I know. No, I'm from Colombia. Born and raised. All right, let's see what else. Danny's Ian McCall. No, I'm not. All right, the Phantom, back to 155 pounds. Who deserves to fight for the vacant title? Very good question. I know I kind of touched on this a little bit just a few minutes ago talking about Khabib, but it kind of just seems a bit obvious to make Dustin Poirier versus Conor McGregor for the vacant title. I mean, Dustin Poirier has put in the work. I was super impressed by the win that he had earlier a few months ago against Dan Hooker. That was an excellent victory. And frankly, the man's put in the work. So if he were to beat Conor McGregor, crown him champion. And again, Conor McGregor is coming off a win over Cowboy Cerrone, who might not be, that was also at 170. But again, we know Conor McGregor plays under different rules. He doesn't really need to get as many victories. And I'm kind of okay with that. I mean, we do know he doesn't need to prove he's elite. We know he's elite. And given his star level, that kind of gets him a foot in the door. So I'm okay with that. Look, I think the most important thing here, and as I said, I think there's going to be a bloodbath at 155 now. But I think the most important thing here is to get the division rolling. So the sooner you can get a title fight for the vacant belt, the healthier and the better is going to be for the future at 155 pounds. And currently, that's the only high-profile fight booked at that weight class that you can actually put the belt on the line. So I say make Dustin Poirier versus Conor McGregor 2 for the vacant title. That's my option. And look, put right on that undercard Tony Ferguson versus Michael Chandler, and you'll have your next title challenger. All in. All in. All right. I see a lot of comments. Let's see what the questions. Okay, this is kind of random, but Ernesto Diaz. Hey, Danny, what are some cool-looking soccer kits you suggest? I want to get my collection up. So I have tons. I actually collect a lot of these old-school kits. So certainly Parma historically has had really beautiful kits. I also have one from Fiorentina in the 90s, and another Italian team, great kids. Obviously, I'm an Atletico Madrid guys. You guys can see here in the background. So, they have some beautiful kits. Even from the early 2000s, you can find some. Italy historically has some beautiful kits, and a lot of teams in the Premier League. You can get some really, really good-looking kits from the 90s. Let's see other questions here. It's funny. Tiramisu jokes are still flying around. Certainly. Danny, do you think Khabib retiring tonight was premeditated? Because in the lead up to the interviews, to the fight, he said he had more fights left in him. And it didn't seem like he was lying then. Yeah, no, for sure. And as I said it earlier, it caught everyone by surprise. It really did. Again, his mom said he wanted him to walk away. We know how hard it was for him to do this camp without his father around. I mean, I spoke, as I said, on Hablemos MMA, my Spanish podcast on Monday, with Khabib's coach, Javier Mendez, El Jefe de AKA. And he said, and he didn't want to go into detail, and frankly, I respect that. I didn't ask many questions around that because I know he had a fight coming up and he can't reveal secrets in the media, but he did say this is one of the hardest camps, one of the most difficult camps that Khabib has ever been in, and one of the toughest camps. And he said, look, whatever could be happening, Khabib always says, my body could be broken, but my mind will never be broken. That's what Javier Mendez said on the podcast, and 100% true. I mean, that guy's mind is something else. It's something else. It's just something else. And frankly, I don't think it was premeditated, but whatever circumstances in the lead up, conversations with his mother led up to making this decision. I respect it, and it seems legit. It really does. And yeah. I mean, without his dad around, I know it's a whole different story. So, and he's made his money, and I think he's more interested now in grooming the next generation. And we know tons of fighters from that region, even some of his family members that are fighting in MMA. I know he wants to sort of follow in his father's footsteps and become that guy that helps everyone reach sort of the next level and fulfill their potentials in their career. And I think this won't be the last we see of Khabib as far as mixed martial arts, maybe competing professionally. But he's going to be involved. He's going to be involved one way or another, and he's going to lead that charge of the Dagestani fighters in that region for sure. He's going to continue his father's legacy. Conor and Dustin fighting for the lightweight title next. You think? Yeah, I already addressed that. Let's see here. Khabib equals GOAT. Very good question here. Now, because of the news and everything that's going on, we're kind of forgetting about the loser here, Justin Gaethje, who performed well. Frankly, I thought he had a very good round. I saw two judges give the first round 10-9 to Justin Gaethje. I don't disagree with that, but it was close. It was close. I think I would have gone with Khabib. Towards the end of the round, he was landing the better strikes, and he got that takedown. But again, early on, he was doing a good job at avoiding any type of close contact and also landing some good shots. So anyways, who will fight Justin Gaethje next? We have a question here. That is a fantastic question. I mean, he got choked out unconscious, but I've been choked out unconscious several times throughout my jiu-jitsu training, and you're good. You can start grappling almost immediately. I mean, I'm not saying it's healthy, but it's certainly not that bad. He's fine. He didn't sustain a whole lot of damage, and I suspect that he wants to get right back on the horse, especially that Khabib is walking away from the sport. If he just gets one win, he's right back in the mix and could very well find himself in a title eliminator bout, I think, with just one win. So this is not the end for Justin Gaethje as far as title fights are concerned. And certainly what happens next, we will find out. But he's a big name. Obviously, this was a big stage. So even in defeat, it raised his stock, I believe. And yeah, I think there's going to be some big fights for him in the future. I think I really like that Tony Ferguson versus Michael Chandler fight. So I don't think neither of those guys will be next for Justin Gaethje. However, there are some other good names, and we know that Justin Gaethje is not very picky about who he fights. He was picky on this occasion. Remember, some people suggested for him to take and defend his interim title against Conor McGregor before fighting Khabib, and he was like, nope. On that case, he was picky. But other than that, he's one of these guys that If he's getting paid, he'll fight anybody anywhere. So I suspect he wouldn't have any other issues fighting other guys at 155 pounds that may not have the biggest names. So that won't be an issue. So right now I'm looking at the UFC lightweight rankings. Obviously, keep in mind because of what happened tonight, it just happened, so they haven't been updated. So Justin Gaethje is still labeled as the interim champion and the #1 contender. That will change come Monday. But look, we got Justin Gaethje, right? #1, Dustin Poirier. #2, Tony Ferguson, 3, Conor at 4. So we know 2 and 4 are busy, McGregor and Poirier. Then we got Ferguson at 3. I'm already, I've suggested the Chandler bout, who's not ranked because he hasn't fought. He just switched over from Bellator. So that leaves a few other names. I think Dan Hooker could be a good option. I think Charles Oliveira would actually be a very good option. In fact, that'd be my favorite option, frankly, because Dan Hooker's coming off a pretty bad fight with Dustin Poirier. And frankly, I don't want to see him in another war. He's a young guy fairly, so I'd like to see him get some momentum behind him and maybe get a more manageable task. But Charles Oliveira right now is at a point in his career where he needs a step up, right? He's already proved he can beat the top 15. He's already proved he can beat the top 10. He's on a win streak. He's sort of reinvented his career, and the Brazilian is looking good. Now, he needs that one fight that puts him over, right? And a name like Justin Gaethje, it'll be nice. He's currently in a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7-fight win streak, with his last victory being a guillotine choke over former title challenger Kevin Lee. So, I think he's currently not booked. He's he was. Oh, okay, no, yeah, he was scheduled to fight Beneil Dariush, and then that fight fell through. So I don't know what the future is with that, but we know that Beneil actually trained with Justin Gaethje. So interesting stuff. Maybe they do rebook that matchup, and Charles Oliveira gets his hands on Beneil Dariush next. But I think for Gaethje, I think that kind of sort of opponent will make sense. Let's see who else is there. I like Quinta. If Paul Felder comes back, that would kind of make sense. I don't know if Anthony Pettis has any relationship as far as friendship goes with Justin Gaethje, but that would be kind of fun. Islam Makhachev is itching for a big name as well. That'd be cool as well. I mean, there are some interesting names. So we'll see what's next for him. I think in the next few months when the division shakes out, we're going to get a few answers on that. A good question, though. And I thought Justin Gaethje did quite well in that first round. I think he avoided the takedowns. He kept the distance and landed some big shots. But when it came down to mat work, when it came down to his jiu-jitsu, it just wasn't there, and Khabib was far more superior. All right. Marco Aceves, thank you for donating to the Super Chat. I always forget, but that's always open. So if you want to contribute to this channel and support, you can do that in the Super Chat. All right, I'm going to answer a couple more questions and then call it quits here. Maybe quickly talk about a few other results that I thought were kind of interesting on the card, and then call it quits here for tonight. If Chandler fights Tony, who do you see Makhachev matching up with? So Islam Makhachev, who is teammate of Khabib, they're boys. They might be even relatives. I'm not sure. He was supposed to be on this card. He was supposed to fight Rafael dos Anjos. I love that booking. The RDA versus Makhachev fight makes complete sense. Former champion returning back to 155 pounds where he had his glory days, right? Leaving the 70-pound weight class where he didn't do quite well there. I love that fight. And frankly, he didn't get injured. It's not like he teared his ACL or something and he's going to be out for 6 months. He got COVID-19. We've seen some fighters, COVID just keep them off for maybe a couple weeks, just as long as they're not testing positive for the virus. And then, get back into shape, do a fairly small training camp, and get right back in there. So I think that's the answer. I think preserve for Islam Makhachev that Rafael dos Anjos matchup. I think that's the move and, frankly, the fight to make. I mean, it was already made, right? All right, so I'm going to switch gears real quick and talk about a few other results that were kind of interesting of the card. Alexander Volkov defeating Walt Harris via TKO body kick in the second round. I've said this a million times, and I'll continue to say it. Volkov is one of the best fighters in that weight class. Frankly, one of the most technical fighters in that weight class. He's not the fastest. He doesn't possess an iron chin like Derek Lewis. He doesn't possess punching power like Francis Ngannou. And I feel like that's kept him away from the top. But if you just look at skill level wise, that the dude's one of the best. The dude's one of the best, and that alone can get you very far. Unfortunately, in the heavyweight division, we know that physicality, chin, and knockout power have more weight than maybe at 125 pounds, right? Just because as they get bigger, everything gets amplified, gets magnified. So I don't know if he'll ever challenge for a UFC belt. I certainly wouldn't rule it out, but I really do respect Volkov a lot, and I think he's a fantastic fighter. And a fighter that's fun to watch, and I'm curious to see what's next for him, but he does deserve a big fight. I'd love to see him against Alistair Overeem or Junior Dos Santos. Any of those fighters, I'd love to see him fight against. Strikers, primarily. There's a few other results. Again, this card took a lot of hits because of COVID-19 and a few other things. Obviously, the Islam Makhachev RDA fight wasn't happening. Lauren Murphy, who picked up a big win over Lilia Sharikova via submission in the second round. She was supposed to fight Cynthia Calvillo. That was going to be a big fight for the women's 125-pound division, but we'll see if they rebook it. Murphy wants a title shot now with a win. I did speak to her a little bit over text before the fight, and she wanted that Calvillo fight rebooked. So he wanted to pick up a big win, not get any injuries, and fight Calvillo next. And, she did just that. So we'll see what's next for her. Phil Haas, if somebody mentioned here, picked up a fantastic victory. Phil's just an amazing athlete, just with crazy knockout power. I mean, picked up a first-round knockout in 18 seconds over Jacob Malcone. And, he just looks incredible. He's a huge prospect at middleweight. The dude's going to be a problem to many, many, many people. So we'll see what happens next. But yeah, that dude's a great addition to 185 pounds. Fantastic fighter. Let's see. Magomedov Ankalaev picking up a big win. Finally fighting Jan Kutilaba. Picked up a first-round knockout. That was kind of nice and a good way to wrap that up. I was kind of sick of all the rebookings and all the bad luck that surrounded that matchup. Tai Tuivasa also coming back, picking up a beautiful knockout in the first round over Stefan Struve. He really needed that one. He was coming off 3 straight defeats, and a young guy, just 27 years old. So someone that just needed some momentum to get back in the mix. Again, he's a guy that's developing. I think he has a lot of potential, not only as a star because of his personality and his charisma, but skills-wise, he's very good. He's got a good chin, very good striking as well, very, very tough. And I think he needs some work in the grappling department. I think he also knows that. That's why earlier this year he was training at AKA, where Kane is there, Daniel Cormier, and so many other good wrestlers. So the future's bright for Tai Tuivasa, I think. But for now, just keep him away from the top 5, top 5. Top 10, top 15, I think, are manageable tasks for him. So, yeah. Right below that, Casey Kenny defeating Nathaniel Wood via unanimous decision. I agreed with the scorecards. I think Casey Kenny did enough to get a convincing win. That was one of the best fights of the night. I think it won fight of the night, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, it did. And that was a fantastic fight. 2 guys that are unranked, and yet they were displaying just amazing technique in there. And I really do think those 2 guys, again, they speak for the bantamweight division. That division is right now, currently, the best division in the UFC roster. You get a little bit of everything. Prospects, rising contenders, established contenders, legends, right? Like Dominic Cruz, Frankie Edgar, Jose Aldo. Get nice little trash talk, right? You got some brash personalities in there. Everyone in the top 15 is game. Like, you can't really... If you put the champion with anybody in the top 15, you always most likely will favor the champion, but you would also go, okay, like, I don't 100% know. In other weight classes, that's really only true for the top 5. Then the top 10, you go, yeah, the champion's going to run through anybody in the top 10 or top 15. But not a bantamweight, man. Not a bantamweight. All those guys are very, very good. And there's guys like Casey Kenny and Nathaniel Wood that are very skilled and are not even in the rankings. So, yeah, bantamweight division is fun. It's fun. And yeah, that's basically the main things the main sort of bouts that we saw at UFC 254. A few other interesting things. Joel Alvarez, who also I had on Hablemos MMA, my Spanish podcast over at MMA Junkie. Picked up a nice first-round submission win over Alexander Yakovlev, and Alvarez is coming off now. He's got 3 wins in a row. That includes this win and also a submission win over Joseph Duffy. So an interesting prospect, also very young, 27 years old. I think at 155, he's got a bright future ahead of him. So we'll see what's next for him. I'll try to look to interview him in the coming weeks. But certainly a good card. I think this was one of the better cards of the year. And again, huge news with Khabib Nurmagomedov, the greatest lightweight of all time, the undisputed champion, calling it quits, leaving his gloves in the octagon, and saying goodbye to MMA. So I appreciate everybody that submitted questions on the YouTube live chat, like always. Remember, you can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Danny Segura TV. On Twitter, that's where most of my work goes, and obviously I talk about MMA. That's what I do for a job over at MMAJunkie.com. So make sure you follow me on socials. Also, on Monday for Hablemos MMA on my Spanish podcast, I'll have UFC welterweight Santiago Ponzinibbio on the show. So that's going to be interesting. He had some interesting comments about his career, his return, and the division in general. So look out to that. English stories will be published on MMAJunkie.com. So if you don't speak Spanish, it's okay. You'll get all the news on MMAJunkie.com. And lastly but not least, subscribe to the channel. Give me a thumbs up on this video. And tell your friends about this channel. That's why, that way it keeps growing and we keep doing more content and more things. So, again, I appreciate you guys tuning in. Enjoy the rest of your day. Finally, we get a UFC card during the day. I think the UFC should do these, not every time, because I certainly like them at night as well. But every now and then, a UFC pay-per-view or UFC Saturday event during the day, I don't think it hurts. I think it's quite nice. Look, it's 7 p.m. here on the East Coast. I got the night ahead of me. And yeah, we just witnessed some good fights. Plus, it's always good to have some breakfast and watch a couple fist fights. So, yeah, we'll see if they implement that strategy moving forward. I don't think so, but knock on wood, hopefully they do. All right, so anyways, I appreciate you guys tuning in. Again, thumbs up, subscribe, and I'll be back with a video, another live Q&A this Tuesday at 10:30 a.m. Eastern. So make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications for the weekly live Q&As that I do. All right. So thank you very much for watching, and I'll catch you guys on Tuesday. Peace.